When you think of Canada, what comes to mind? Probably maple leaves, maybe some hockey, and just vast snowy landscapes, right? But the true scale of the country and the sheer complexity hiding just under the surface, well, it's genuinely mind-boggling. So let's dig into the real story of this northern giant. So first things first, let's talk about size. I mean, pure, massive size. Canada is the second largest country on the entire planet by land area. There's only one nation that's bigger, and that's Russia. The scale we're talking about here is just incredible. To try and wrap your head around that, get this. You could take all 27 countries of the European Union, drop them inside of Canada's borders, and you'd still have room left over. It's a staggering, almost unimaginable amount of space. And this is where we hit a really fascinating paradox. You have this enormous country, one of the biggest in the world, but almost everybody, 80% of the population, is packed into this one, relatively thin strip right along the US border. So, what's going on here?
Well, it's really a mix of common sense and cold hard economics. The South just has a much more livable climate. It's also where you'll find all the major cities like Toronto and Vancouver. And it's all powered by that huge trade relationship with the United States. If you venture just a little bit north, you run smack into the harsh reality of Arctic Tundra and permafrost. That's a layer of ground that's permanently frozen, making it incredibly tough to build anything. Okay, so we've got a sense of the land itself, but what about the people who actually live there? Because Canada isn't just a vast physical space. It's also a huge cultural one. People often call it a mosaic for a reason. You see, the foundations of modern Canada are really deep in its colonial history. Roughly a quarter of the population traces their roots back to Britain, and another quarter back to France. But that's just the starting point. The other half? It's this incredibly vibrant mix of people from literally all over the world alongside the indigenous peoples who've inhabited this land for thousands of years. And that dual British and French heritage, it's baked right into the country's DNA. Canada is officially a bilingual nation, which means both English and French have equal status. And that's not just some modern policy. It's a direct outcome of the history of those two colonial powers shaping the nation from the very beginning. This timeline gives us a kind of quick flyover of how this whole mosaic got built. It all started, 16,000 years ago with the first peoples. Then, in the 1600s, the Europeans arrived. Fast forward to 1867, and Canada becomes its own country. But the story keeps evolving, with really crucial moments like the creation of Nunavut way up in 1999. And we really have to pause on Nunavut because it's a perfect example of this ongoing story. Creating it wasn't just about drawing new lines on a map. No way. It was a historic, landmark step forward, creating a territory that is governed by and for the Inuit people. This was a massive milestone for Indigenous self-governments in Canada.
All right, so we've got this massive, super diverse country. How in the world do you run it? Let's take a look at the unique political and economic systems that kind of make Canada tick. So, Canada's government can be a little confusing at first glance. It's called a constitutional monarchy. What that basically means is, the British king is technically the official head of state, but the real day-to-day political power, that's all in the hands of the Prime Minister and the government that the Canadian people democratically elect. The easiest way to get it is to compare it to the US system. See, in Canada, the Prime Minister is the head of government, and they come from whatever party has the majority in Parliament. In the US, the President is both the head of government and the head of state, and they're elected totally separately from Congress. It's just a fundamentally different way of setting things up. And the economy, well, it kind of follows a similar let's blend it approach. For the most part, it's a free market system where private businesses can thrive, but the government plays a much more active role than you might see in a lot of other places. And here's what that actually looks like. Canada is an absolute economic powerhouse. We're talking top 10 in the world. A lot of that strength is built on its incredible natural resources. We're talking forestry, mining, and oil. But unlike a pure free market system, the government steps in to provide things like universal healthcare for everybody. It also runs key public services. So you get this really distinct blend of private industry and a strong social safety net. But, of course, like any country, Canada isn't just standing still. It's facing a whole new set of modern challenges that are really going to define its future here in the 21st century. Okay. First up is a classic Canadian problem. So much of the country's wealth is tied up in its natural resources. But the big question is,
How do you keep that economic engine running while also protecting the very environment it depends on, especially now in an age of climate change? It's a huge balancing act.
Next up, as more and more people immigrate to Canada from all over the world, that long-held ideal of a peaceful, multicultural society is really being put to the test. You've got new challenges popping up, like housing shortages and making sure new communities are integrated well. It's a major focus for the future. And finally, the economy. Just like a lot of other developed nations, Canada is dealing with rising inequality. That old idea of getting a stable, long-term job for life, that's becoming a lot less common. So now the country is trying to figure out how to make sure prosperity is shared more widely among everyone. Now, as Canada faces all these big questions, it has a kind of guiding star. It's this foundational document, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It was set up back in 1982, and it lays out the legal and moral framework for equality and justice for all citizens. It's the benchmark they use to measure themselves against these new challenges. So in the end, Canada is a nation of just massive scale, both on the map and in its culture. It's built on this really unique blend of different systems and ideals. But as it tries to navigate all the complex challenges of a new century, you have to wonder, what does its future really hold? The question is as wide open as the country itself.